Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, guys, I have got what is for me personally, arguably the most special beer review I've done to date. This is the beer that I have been hearing about the most for years and years and years now, and I have been looking forward to finally getting my hands on them, and I have finally done that. I did get this beer from not Tavour, but from Craft Shack, another craft beer and craft drink actually, to your door service, and I will do another video kind of comparing and contrasting my thoughts between the two services, but for the purposes of today's beer review, we're going to jump right in it. I honestly can't wait. I have been literally waiting years to get my hands on this beer, and it is a beer that needs no introduction. This is Russian River Brewing Company's Pliny the Elder. It's an Imperial IPA clocking in at 8% ABV. Russian River is based in Santa Rosa, California, though they do have another brewing up. I think it's set in Winthrop, California. This beer, they say, clocks in at 100 IBUs, and it's got a blend of hops that includes Amarillo, Centennial, CTZ, Cascade, Warrior, and Simcoe. So we got a big IPA here with a big high alpha acid content bill. And this is kind of the OG granddaddy, like people that are really big into IPAs and really big into West Coast style IPAs in particular say that this is the OG. This is just still among the best, if not the best. If you were to poll 100 different West Coast IPA beer nerds from around the country, this one would probably come up more than any other. And I do kind of find this interesting. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've had it. But I believe that Stone Brewing Company's Ruination IPA also has 100 IBUs. So it'll be interesting to see just how bitter forward and hop forward this beer is, but nonetheless, we're going to jump right into it. So label art, it's very understated. It's just kind of got an evergreen label with a red circle in the middle that says Pliny the Elder. Doesn't really need to say any more than that. They're going to let the beer speak for itself. So let's get this cracked. This is a little over a pint. I think it's a pint, 1 1/4 ounces, so 17 1/4. I doubt I can quite get the whole beer in here, but we're just going to get it poured regardless. Very nice looking beer. This is a textbook IPA color. Looks absolutely lovely. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit, let that head form. And we're going to get it right up over this one for a proper sniff. Visually, yeah, true deep golden yellow color. It's got pretty slow carbonation coming up. Of course, it did form a nice head, and that is a pretty nice, creamy looking head there. Give it a sniff. Oh, huge aromas coming off of this beer. I am absolutely getting some of that classic pine undercurrent that could be coming from a few different hops in here, notably Simcoe. I'm also getting a little bit of stone fruit, slight bit of citrus, slight bit of floral. So this kind of has a lot of the classic big hop aromas you might expect in a big IPA. And indeed, with a laundry list that they put in here, it's a really, really good backbone to bring out a ton of hop aroma. And it did just that. I mean, it's just wonderful. It smells balanced in the hop profile as well. So I'm thinking that is likely to be the case in the flavor profile. This is absolutely going to make a mess in my beard, but we're going to jump right in. Without further ado, sip one, Pliny the Elder. Oh yeah. Okay guys, I absolutely see what all the hype is about. This is a very, very big beer. Y'all know that I don't normally go for Imperials for the reason that it tends to be common practice in most beers that I can find in the market from any, and we're talking top tier brewers, that the higher the ABV steps up on an IPA, the more that the perception of bitter styles back. Now this does say 100 IBUs, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. As we've talked about this, that is the actual scientific measurement, but IBUs, in terms of how they come apart from person to person, how they're interpreted, that's completely subjective. Something that's 100 IBUs could taste like it barely has any hops in it to one person, and to another it could taste like the hoppiest thing in the world, so astringently bitter they couldn't drink it. So it's interesting to know the science and the actual number, but really IBUs are a perception thing. It's just international bitterness units, of course, but this one, I gotta say, is very, very hop forward. Not only do you get all of these amazing, absolutely amazing hop aromas, the flavor profile is also in here as well. And I gotta say, from the difference between the aroma profile and the flavor profile is relatively pronounced. What comes through dominant in terms of classic hop flavors that hit you on the palate is very much an earthy and a pine-driven kind of undertone. That's the big hop bitter flavor profiles that really come through out of the hops in this. It's very much earthy and pine. Those are the two most dominant. There is a little bit of subtle citrus, but it's very much citrus oil, citrus rind. Think of like ruby red grapefruit peel, that kind. It's very, very nice. For me, this is almost just about as good as an IPA is ever going to get. And West Coast is absolutely my favorite substyle of IPA because I like the big, bold, in-your-face, bitter-forward IPAs, especially those that have a nice earthy and piney undercurrent. And this having a nice bit of that kind of citrus rind as well. I mean, it's got all of my favorite things in a single beer. I absolutely understand the hype around this. I do not think that the hype is blown out of proportion whatsoever. This beer right here lives up to the hype. I could not be happier about this moment right now where I'm getting to finally sit here and drink this beer, in case it's not evident. I mean, this is just tremendous. So we're going to jump back in for another sip, and we're going to let everything re-intensify. We're going to pick apart the body and the mouthfeel, going to let all those myriad flavors open back up, and we're going to talk about the finish. But absolutely, on the first very small sip I had, I am impressed. I think that this is well worth the hype, and I'm going in for take two. Yeah, so body and mouthfeel on this beer. This is an Imperial, it's 8% ABV. It's got some substance to it. It's got a nice amount of resistance, definitely above average for the ABV range. 8% is not low, but it's not super high either. It's got a really nice presence to it. It feels substantive when it's moving around on the palate. In terms of kind of the resistance to it, the mouthfeel side of the equation, there's no real dryness. It's very wet and round, as you would expect from an IPA. And the mouthfeel's got a reasonable amount of viscosity as well. And that pairs quite well with the noticeably above average body to it. So it's very nice. The body and the mouthfeel go very much in tandem. And that's a great underpinning for something with flavor and aroma profiles as big as this beer. It really needs to be in a much more substantial beer, or there could be elements that get lost in translation. But for me, this is a fantastic beer. I think it's extremely well balanced. And that's kind of the last place I wanted to touch here, is if we're thinking about the actual balance of the beer. And that for me is always going to be the most important category when we're talking about what separates a very good beer, an average beer, a bad beer, to an upper echelon beer. And this for me is absolutely balanced. It is clear that it is made for people that like a big, bold West Coast style IPA. This is not one of those IPAs that I would recommend to people that don't really care for IPAs, don't like things that are particularly bitter, or that are just getting into IPAs. This would probably be a bit over the top. But if you, as I, am a hophead and you want them bigger, bolder, in your face, look no further. I mean, this is easily in the most hop-dominant and bitter-forward IPAs I've ever had, and I think it's fantastic for it. But what it does well, aside from my personal preference, the balance of how they do it. That's a big hop bill. 6 big high alpha acid content hops that all bring a lot of independent aroma characteristics to the table, as well as flavor profiles to the table, and none of these are really getting muddied or muddled. It's all coming through very, very clearly and it just makes for a complete package. The body is right, the mouthfeel is right, the aroma is huge, it's fantastic, it's fragrant. You get it into the flavor profile and it opens up all these layers and it just continues to intensify and intensify, and it just gets progressively bigger and more bitter dominant and more hop driven. It is absolutely fantastic. In terms of the finish, you might expect this already, and yes, the finish is extremely long, with a nice, relatively resistant mouthfeel, weightier body, and this big intensity of bitters. It really does coat all of this all over the palate, and it lingers long after each sip. I've still got very, very present earthy and pine and citrus just floating on the back of my palate. It's not a whisper that, oh yeah, you remember that sip you had 2 minutes ago. It's quite intense. So yeah, guys, this beer, for my money, lives up to the hype. I am so glad I finally got to get my hands on it. I am gonna take my time, sip on this beer, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, so now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're gonna get it ranked. Once again, this was Russian River Brewing Company's Pliny the Elder, an Imperial West Coast style IPA clocking in at 8% ABV. Russian River is based in Santa Rosa, California. This might come as no surprise to many of you, but there is no need to go through every category one by one. It did indeed get a very, very well-earned perfect score, 10 out of 10 in all categories. That's the aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, finish, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling and intangible, my subjective thoughts category, and example of style. So it does get a perfect, well-earned 100 out of 100. Guys, I have never been more excited to try a beer since I started my channel years ago, and this one was absolutely fantastic. I've been hearing the hype about this for ages, and knowing that I am a massive, massive hophead, big West Coast style IPA fan, it was just a crime that I couldn't get these from any distributor in my area. But luckily Craft Shack has a deal with Russian River now, so I've got my access, and it absolutely lived up to the hype. If you've never had this beer and you love a big, bold, in-your-face, hoppy IPA, I highly, highly recommend it. If you, like me, are kind of in the southeast of the United States and there's no distributor near you, check out Craft Shack. If you haven't checked them out, they're like Tavour, a bit different. I'll go more in depth when I do a comparison video of those two services, but you can go straight to craftshack.com right now, set up an account, and set up for notifications, and they will, hey, we just got this in, we just got this in. And this is a big one. It's hugely popular, so it will always pop up in your feeds the instant that they have more in stock. I highly recommend it. I finally got my hands on it. It was well worth the many, many year wait. Absolute slam dunk of a beer. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.